Despite a 10-game winning streak, are the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles still underrated? We'll get into that and more on this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. I'm Louie DiBiase, joined as always by Gino Camilleri. Today's episode is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. Eagles Commanders this Sunday in DC. If the Eagles win, not only will it be 11 straight games, but they will at least guarantee one banner in 2024 with a clinched NFC East championship. So a lot to play for in this game, Gino. Looks like they're pretty healthy. A.J. Brown, who we'll discuss later, he said he's playing in this football game. So this is a big one. And again, 11 straight wins would be crazy. They already set the franchise record at 10 straight. And yet it still feels like, and I have a couple theories as to why, that even like in Philadelphia, are the 2024 Eagles still underrated? Like, I think people are starting to have the conversation of, okay, they're starting to look like the 2017 team, the 2022 team. But I feel like the tone is a little different with this team compared to those two. I have a couple reasons, but I'm curious your take on that.
Sport, and especially in football, is looked at completely differently when you have expectations.
That's literally my number one point, too. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah.
2017. You're coming off of that 2016 team where you figured that Wentz was going to take a jump. You brought in the right parts.
Yep.
But all of a sudden, you're like, oh, this team, they might be special here. But you weren't expecting that. 2022, you brought in all these pieces. Did you know they were all going to work? Absolutely not. Did you know after seasons where you were banged up and banged up and banged up that you were going to be as healthy as you were and things were just going to work?
Or Hurts taking that MVP step, did you know that was coming?
No, you did not.
Yeah.
2024 is completely different. You came into this season with the expectation to hoist a Lombardi trophy.
Yeah.
And that's why, and I'm glad that I was around to live through that time period where in the early 2000s, it was, okay, get off your horse. We lost in the NFC Championship again and again and again. Where do we got to go? We got to go hoist a Lombardi trophy. So winning the NFC East was just... I know there were Patriots fans that would say it for the longest time, but they're like, we'll just start watching football in January. There's no reason to watch it in the months of September and October. Those are baseball months. Those are early hockey and basketball months. They knew that there were higher aspirations, and that's what the Eagles have right now. I think they're getting not just underappreciated, even disrespected to a little degree, to the point
because the
where
bar is so high, right?
We're talking about how Jalen Hurts looks as something to give him a negative point. Like we've jumped the shark with negative narratives on the Philadelphia Eagles, in my opinion, because a lot of the teams that are talked about as some of the best, they have question marks, and I don't think they are getting talked about as much as some of the issues that the Eagles have. I don't think those are as big as Buffalo's defense, as Detroit's injury issues, as Kansas City only winning these one-score games and having a middle-of-the-road, near-zero-point differential.
And
why
yet this
aren't
is
those
amplified.
points being talked about?
I was going to
those
say,
points being magnified, Lou.
2022 and 2017, they didn't have their small problems amplified to this level, but I think you're spot on. Expectations bring that, right? That's just,
game,
and that's a good thing, right? That's just life of being a consistent
absolutely.
contender. I think it's a compliment in a way that the standard is so high. But I did wonder that because I was thinking about this game, and it's they could win the division, and that doesn't do anything for me anymore.
No, it doesn't ruffle your feathers.
No, not at all. Because there's no, like you said, there's no surprise element. 2017, you didn't know that was going to happen. 2022 on paper, heading into that game, you're like, okay, they're loaded. But the big question was, Jalen Hurts, is he going to hold this football team back? And when he didn't, there was just an enjoyment of riding that wave, that roller coaster that was completely unexpected. Whereas this year, it doesn't feel like there's that dopamine rush with this football team, maybe because they've just been doing it so consistently for years. So I think that's a really good point. And I also think that even though we know the collapse is so far in the past now at this point with this football team, I do think that, for at least for a little bit, not anymore, but that also had fans and I think some media members alike not enjoying the win streak as much or being skeptical because they were waiting for that next shoe to drop. And I don't think there is a shoe dropping at any point. I think they're just this good of a football team. And last year's collapse was a last year thing. I fell victim of that. I think the first 4 to 5 games of the win streak, I was still a little skeptical, even after the Bengals win, whereas now I'm enjoying the ride and I'm totally convinced, especially after this win against the Steelers. So I think that's probably a part of it too, whether it's justified or not.
And when you have A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith, you signed Saquon Barkley, and you have the offensive line you have, and the defense is playing the way that they are, I think a lot of the talking heads and a lot of the media are waiting for that moment that you were talking about, Lou. But every time we are waiting for that moment, it doesn't come with this 2024 team.
Because if it wasn't going to come last week, Gino, it's not coming, right? I mean,
Washington's really the last one, and I feel a lot better about this game than I did the first time they played Washington, I'll say that much.
And even if they lose, I'm not expecting a collapse, right? I mean,
no, it's going to be a tough divisional game where Washington, they have a lot to play for as well. We mentioned that on the show the other day, on the road. At the same time, Lou, they have the guys now where growing up in the early 2000s and watching those teams, you knew the NFC East was yours every single year. And you knew 2 or 3 losses was the maximum that you were going to have. That's got to be the norm. We've jokingly pointed at the Doug Peterson new norm quote time and time again. This has to be the new norm because things aren't going to change after this year. They're not going to change probably after next year that much either. The core pieces that you have are foundationally here. So come into every season with the expectation and be hard on them and be critical on them. And that's a lot of the reason why, Lou, you and I were the way that we were in the beginning is because this wasn't a first year of Nick Sirianni, first year of Chip, first year of Doug. That's not what it was.
It's not a first or second year quarterback that's on a rookie deal.
Team that went to a Super Bowl 2 years ago that you knew that's what they were looking for last year and you epically collapsed. How are you going to respond? Well, you got a team that realizes that last year was the anomaly. You got a coach that really is cementing home that message of toughness, detail, togetherness. They keep harping on that. The guys on offense are responding in multiple different ways, Lou. It's not just a one-dimensional beast where they can throw the football, but they can't run. They can run, but they can't throw. After last week, what more can you say about this team? Defensively, they take away your best pitch every single time.
Yeah, there's no holes, and that's
the recipe to win in these months, Lou. Like, why are we overlooking this team?
And that's why I was posing this question is, why am I not feeling that giddiness almost that I had in 2017 or 2022, because this 2024 roster I love more than those rosters on paper. Like, they have so many guys that are so exciting, and it's a young, like, this is the kind of roster that I've always wanted the Eagles to have. But I really do think it's the expectation thing, and because I'm a younger guy, at least for an Eagles fan, so I don't really I was alive, of course, for the NFC title runs in the early 2000s, but a 5 to 10-year-old kid. I don't think I was really emotionally processing that. So this is the first time that I've really even been exposed to them being a consistent winner at the top. Even, you could include 2017 to 2019, that window, but there was a giddiness even in the 2018 and 2019 runs because they were so up and down the first half of the year, those seasons, that when they did pull off that run at the end, it was unexpected, and it felt like the odds were stacked against them. So this is the first time this 3 to 4 year run that the Sirianni-Hurts era is on, where it's like, yeah, this is the expectation. Like, this is what they should be doing. So not that should take any of the excitement out of it, but I think the expectations do in a way. But I think that's a good thing. I'd rather have this be the reality than it be exciting because it's once every 5 years this happens. I want it every year, right?
Without a doubt, man. And I can tell you, I host the Monday show with Ty Rowland of Locked On Titans. He's not having fun, folks. Like, that's not a franchise,
I don't want to feel
situation that you want to be in. The Eagles, that isn't some place that they are very often. And when they do, they turn it around rather quickly. And to be in this world of having this expectation, Lou, why do 2018 and 2019 sit in our memories so fondly? Exactly that. Because we went into those seasons with an expectation that there was going to be these grandeur at the end of the season. We're going to have this party where we hoist another one, 2 in a row we're talking before we even get off the jet after 2017. But why it sucks so much is because you knew what they could do. This team, we still have to see what they can do, and it's very promising. This isn't a team that's... Even that Super Bowl 2017, Lou, we got to remember that. We're going into Christmas. Christmas might have been the darkest day of the 2017
We were
Eagles
talking about
team.
starting Nate Sudfeld in a playoff game over
Yes.
Nick Foles at this point. People forget that.
You're in a much better place, much better coaching staff. Even after last year, Lou, those wounds are gone. They're healed. This 2024 team knows what is ahead, and I think Nick Sirianni put on a masterclass how to talk to the media this week, where he just continued to say, like, we don't even look at the schedule to see when we can clinch the NFC East, and that banner doesn't mean anything to us, and we don't worry about what's ahead. It's about right now. It's about handling this business right now. They got to be locked in. All of that matters, and everything that has mattered, looking back since the bye week, is 1-0. You have to go 1-0 every week, and you couldn't exemplify it anymore. This is the first time I'm a little juiced up for like a divisional game late in the season. Last year, that Dallas game, I'm sitting in the Dallas Love Fort Worth airport. I literally felt like I needed to go incognito. I felt a shell of myself supporting that team. I feel so much better supporting this Eagles team now, Lou. They're made for these months right now. We know who this team is. It's after Thanksgiving. I don't see them changing.
And if they go 1-0 this week, they will be NFC East champions for the second time in 3 years. Can they do it? How will they do it on offense? We'll put our money where our mouth is with LOE3 coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
This episode of LOE is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy, and it's not just football. You can play basketball or any of your favorite sports over at Prize Picks, and they're going to make your holidays bigger and brighter. You can now turn your money into 1,000 times what you deposited on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away to their $30+ million to their 10+ million members during Pickmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your pick hits, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money fast and as easy in as 15 minutes. This week, I'm looking at Jared Goff for more than 230 passing yards. And of course, I'm riding with Saquon Barkley for more than 1 touchdown. It's quick, simple, and so much fun to challenge myself and my friends. Download the Prize Pick app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you use code LOCKEDONNFL and you play just $5. Prize Picks, run your game.
Well, it's that time of year again. The college football playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins tomorrow, December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs, SMU battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Time now for LOE3 presented by FanDuel. 3-player prop bets each for Gino and I for Eagles Commanders. And this is a bounce-back game for the Eagles passing attack after a dominant performance against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So now, Gino, it will be interesting to see what they do on offense. Is it a pass-heavy game script again early on? Is Kellen Moore going to try a lot of the same things that helped them get started in the first quarter? Is it back to a Saquon Barkley heavy approach? I am curious what they'll do, because that was the second part of what I just said, the Saquon part. That was the blueprint against Washington the first time, and it absolutely worked. Like, they stayed patient with it. It wasn't working early, but the doors eventually blew off that Washington defensive line, and I do think that'll probably be the majority of this game again.
And you're also coming off of Saquon's worst game, and to say that after he still put up close to 80+ yards overall is saying something, but a low game for him in terms of output. The way that you won the game the first time, Lou, don't change the recipe. I think you continue to do the same thing. I think Saquon is the guy that you push this game plan through because Marshawn Lattimore, who was on Washington at the time you played him, he wasn't healthy. He will be back. Most likely he will be on the outside. You'll probably see St. Juste on the opposite side. That's going to be some tough 50-50 battles with DeVonta, with AJ. Like those matchups more last week against Pittsburgh, but at the same time, expect them to continue to win. Maybe not as high volume and output in the passing game, but Saquon, that's where this thing has to get started, Lou, in the trenches.
All right, let's take a look at our bets for Eagles Commanders. And we both have a Jalen Hurts bet to start things off. I'm going to take the over on his completion line, which is 16.5. That's at -114. You have him to record 5+ rushing yards in each quarter, which is at +600. Jalen Hurts has been really good running the football the last few weeks. Interesting, though, with that broken finger, of course, he's got to hold that ball in his right hand, so we'll see how that affects him moving forward. But I like both bets here. I think 16.5 for completions, especially after last week, Gino. Like, I'm going to hammer that line.
And last week, that was high. And we said going into last week when that line was at 17.5, that's a good number for him because even if he completes 70%, you're only saying he needs to throw 24, 25 balls.
Exactly.
And I think that's probably more on par with where he'll be against Washington. When it comes down to that rushing bet, I'm trying to get back.
I like these quarter
into
bets
the
you've
black.
been doing each week.
I'm trying to get some money for our listeners here, our everydayers. We went 5-1 last week.
Had a good week.
At +600, the way I broke this down, Lou, I went and I looked at last game against Washington. Jalen Hurts handled the ball on the ground 10 times. Okay?
Yeah.
Even though he only averaged 4 yards a rush, putting up 40 yards, how my mind said this is, if he has 2 rushes per quarter, 2 rushes a quarter, right?
Designed or scramble.
Yeah. One of them's going to pop for at least 6 or 7 yards, right?
Even if they don't, I mean, you're going to get probably a 2 or 3 yard, or even on like a push, you could get that.
Kellen Moore is going to call designed runs to
You're going to get at least one designed run a corner, probably a quarter, right? And then probably at least one scramble drill play where he runs.
So you need 2. If he's averaging 4 yards on the ground against Washington, you need 2 to fulfill that number. His total line at the end of the day is 39.5 yards. But with this, it's only 20 total yards. So you cut his total line when it comes to rushing in half, and now you're just saying, give me one good scramble a quarter, maybe a tush push for another yard or so. So let's hopefully get a big one at +600.
All right, let's take a look at our second bets here. I have a DeVonta Smith parlay at +109. I'm going to take the over on 4.5 receptions and the over on his line of receiving yards, which is 54.5. You also have a DeVonta Smith bet for your second one, an anytime touchdown at +220. DeVonta Smith, by the way, on pace to break his in-season record for touchdowns in a year. He's at 6. The record for him is 7, which he's had in back-to-back years. DeVonta's had a nose for the end zone this year, especially with Kellen Moore, Gino, using him more inside. He's got those choice option routes that I really like using him in, kind of like Kellen Moore used CeeDee Lamb back in Dallas. So I like the touchdown bet. That's hit for us a lot when we pick Smitty to get in the end zone. And then, 5 catches for over 54 yards. He normally gets that when he's healthy. The only times he really hasn't was that stretch against Washington and Dallas where the hamstring was just clearly holding him back.
For the longest time, there was one player that killed a certain divisional opponent, and that was Boston Scott against the Giants.
Yeah.
When are we going to start talking about DeVonta Smith just eviscerating Washington every time he plays them?
No, he always has just one insane contested catcher. So, you're right.
Dude, he puts up magnificent numbers every time he plays this.
The only time he didn't was this past game on Thursday Night Football because it felt like he was running on one leg at that point.
I love the output when it comes to DeVonta.
Yeah.
I love it when it comes to AJ as well. His numbers are a bit higher, and that Lattimore matchup it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
I still think Smitty has the upper hand on a St. Juste, who is a bigger guy. Smitty can get in and out of his breaks. You're going to see some double moves probably, those choice routes like you're talking about.
It's a good matchup inside, too, with rookie Mike Saintsville. So if he's playing in the slot, that's a good battle, too.
I like Smitty in every one-on-one situation. I cannot emphasize that enough. But at the
There'll
same
never
time,
be a corner, Gino, that I'm like, oh, I can't take A.J. Brown or DeVonta Smith because this guy's on him, you know?
You have to. You have to feel confident in both of them because of what they have done. I mean, the tape speaks for itself. And just looking at the numbers, too, if we give these guys 7 to 9 targets or more than that a game, we're getting 60-plus easy out of them. I mean, just go and look at the history. Anytime you give them the amount of targets and that heavy target share like this team preaches, they usually answer the call.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see our final bets here on LOE 3. I'm taking one for the defense. Jaden Daniels will have under 1.5 passing touchdowns. That's at minus 225. Gino has the over for alternate rushing yards for Saquon Barkley at 110. That's at plus 154. I like that. If Saquon wants to break this record of Eric Dickerson's, he's going to have to get over 110. So if he's gunning for the record, that's a good line to set. And then for me, Gino, it's like Quinyon Mitchell, Darius Slay. Hold on. I actually saw a stat about this today that made me want to take this bet. The trio of Quinyon Mitchell, Darius Slay, and Cooper DeJean, they have, let me see this. They have allowed just 2 touchdowns this year combined, those 3. So
not too sure.
With Jaden Daniels running too, I think they'll add an emphasis on giving the ball to Brian Robinson. I'll have the under on that 1.5 line.
As much as the Eagles did a good job running the football in the last game, I thought Brian Robinson did a good job pushing the ball upfield.
And he's been having a good couple weeks. Yeah.
Think the run defense will do better this time around. Think they're a little bit more established this part of the season. But Jaden Daniels, man, that you've seen even Matt Stafford get one scramble a game that could be a big one. Jaden Daniels will probably have a couple, but they've also done a really good job pinching the edge, man, like not allowing guys to get outside that tackle box. The defense has to play quick. They got to be on their toes. Take Brian Robinson out of the game by playing physical coming downhill, and same thing with Jaden Daniels. Like if you see him in the open field, if he's not sliding, you make him not want to do that again.
LOE 3 is, as always, presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sports. But coming up next, we're going to start a new segment, Quote of the Day, from one of the Eagles players from the press conferences of the week, and it's going to have to do with A.J. Brown's status for this game against the Commanders. We'll get into that as we wrap up this Friday edition of Locked On Eagles. Locked On Eagles is sponsored by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, they're offering more than 40 free online courses, including Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and so much more. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. All right, time for Quote of the Day, and it comes from wide receiver 1, who gave us his playing status, Gino, on Sunday against the Washington Commanders. A.J. Brown, quote, "I'm playing. Everyone's dealing with something at this point," which is 100% correct. 3 games to go, an extended schedule. The Eagles have not had a bye week since week 5, so number 11 will be playing in this football game. And why I chose what seems like a pretty basic quote is, of course, this is huge since Marshawn Lattimore made his debut for Washington last week and looked pretty solid, so you're going to need Brown and Smith healthy and happy, of course, to have success through the passing game. But I also think it kind of got me thinking about Saquon. It's like, okay, everybody's dealing with something right now. Last week was the first time this year you kind of saw Barkley get banged up, and I'm like, everybody's dealing with something, and you don't want to stop using Saquon. But I'm of the opinion that I'm not like going all in on trying to get him this record. I know it would be awesome, and even Jason Kelsey the other day said like they should go for it. It would be so fitting to have the Eagles have that rushing record. But man, you got to keep this guy healthy for the postseason so you can still pin your ears back and be a run-first offense. So you can't play scared, of course, but I do think some sort of load management would be good for number 26 these last 3 games.
There was another quote from the head coach today that said they're going to do whatever it takes to win football games the rest of the way.
Kenny G's been good, though, too. Like, let's get more, I can't believe I'm saying that, but more touches for 14.
As good as Saquon has been this year, Lou, I think it's very unfair to say that it's like, okay, you're going to get a couple snaps off. Because then it's AJ and DeVonta are like,
yeah,
hey,
but he's taken more.
Here?
He's had more carries than anybody in football. Like, I think they'd be smart enough to use proper context in that situation, you know? Like, you got to keep, and he has a lengthier injury history than those two. Again, I'm not saying play scared and don't use him heavily these last 3 games, but I don't know. I just really want to make sure this guy's healthy for the postseason.
I think you need them all. I really do.
Of course.
And I think we said that on last week's show, that as good as having either DeVonta and or AJ in and of themselves, why does last week's game happen? Because you have both of them, and you have Saquon. I think the guy that it's like, we could get some more output from like Dallas Goedert if he was healthy. Maybe we could figure this out.
Nice,
like, who's going to carry the burden if these guys don't step up? Like, do you think these teams down the stretch are going to roll over for you for your second string, for your third string? Not saying those guys don't deserve it and are good enough, but they're not going to roll over. It's 3 divisional.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying don't play Saquon on the field snap-wise. I just like that they played more balanced last week against Pittsburgh. Not that, again, I want them to be a run-heavy team when it comes time for the postseason. That's still when this football team is best. But I think you can probably still get the 1 seed or have a chance these last 3 games and have just a little bit more of a balanced approach. I'm not saying Saquon should only touch the ball now 10 to 15 times in the game, but I mean, there's been games again where he's got 26 to 30 touches. And so maybe there's some sort of middle ground. I don't know. Last week kind of scared me a little bit seeing him banged up. It's like, oh yeah, this happened at times in New York. Look, let's just make sure this guy's 100% for the postseason.
I totally get it. I do. And I get wanting to take the cautious approach. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to counter you and say,
sure.
Okay, let's say you get out to a big enough lead to win these games, right?
Yeah.
How many snaps does Saquon average in all of those games?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Probably like 20 to 30
Probably.
Instead of like 40 to 50.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's an idea. What if you get the 1 seed and take a complete game of snaps off of his plate?
Yeah, that's a good point. Have him benched for the Giants.
There's your
game.
Load management.
Yeah.
That
would be a nice.
That'd
be a nice FU to New York if he's just in street clothes because they already have everything clinched up. Week 18.
Who knows, man? Who knows?
No, it's a good point. Yeah.
Even if you don't have it clinched up week 18, to have a chance to win the number 1 seed, that's what Saquon's acquisition was all about, man. It wasn't just getting to the playoffs. It's setting ourselves up for success, and everybody is going to have to play banged up, like A.J. Brown said, and that's a great message to send. And if anybody is going to be forced off of the field, like, you're going to need Big Dom and then some to sit Saquon out of a game.
No, I know. I totally agree, but it'll be interesting to see how they kind of move this offense these last 3 games from blueprint perspective. Do they throw more? Are they going to go back to, who they were? I do wonder if Saquon wants to go for the record. I'm sure he does to a degree. He has to average, a little over 140 rushing yards a game over the last 3 games, so
just
very
pop a
doable.
Couple big ones early on. Put this game to bed. You could rest them, take the snaps off.
Yep.
That would be even better. But
he'll be a big part of the
easy
game
one,
plan.
Man. Don't come out sleeping like you did against Carolina. Know what's at stake again this week.
You got to come out the way you did last week. For sure. Eagles Commanders this Sunday at 1 o'clock in D.C. Gino and I will be back for the postgame show right after. Until then, we're going to sign off. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen and watch each and every day. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase. Thanks as always for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.